We're back with Senator Tim Kaine of Virginia. He's a leading Democrat on the Armed Services and Foreign Relations Committee. We're talking about U.S. Special Operations Forces now heading to Syria, under 50, but still the first ground combat troops heading to this very, very dangerous assignment. You believe the president should seek formal congressional authorization to upgrade, to move to this new phase in the war. He says he has that authorization based on the votes back in 2001. Why isn't that good enough?
Wolf, if you look at the 2001 authorization, it's very specific. It allows the president the ability to go after the perpetrators of the 9/11 attacks. ISIL was formed 2 years after 9/11. ISIL is actually engaged in a battle with al-Qaeda now in Syria and elsewhere. So to claim that the authorization that allowed us to go after al-Qaeda also covers ISIL basically would turn the authorization into a carte blanche for the president to wage executive war without ever coming to Congress. I think that is highly, highly troubling. And since the president started the war against ISIL in August of 2014, I have been urging Congress to do the job we're supposed to do under Article 1. Remember, the president has actually given us a proposed authorization. Didn't do it till February, but it's been crickets up here since he did that. It's time for us to have the debate and shape an authorization for what is a growing and mutating war that is now encompassing not just Iraq and Syria, but many other nations as well.
Do you support his decision to send 50 ground combat special operation forces to Syria?
Wolf, to the extent that we've had the briefing about why he is proposing it, I could certainly see myself voting for it as part of a strategy. But I don't think the president should be doing this without a vote. You probably noticed about 10 days before, the president deployed 300 forces to Cameroon and sent us a war powers notification. These are forces to battle Boko Haram, and Boko Haram has pledged allegiance to ISIL. So now what we have is ISIL in Iraq and Syria, Afghanistan, Yemen, Libya, Somalia, and an affiliate in Cameroon. We're stretching ourselves thin, and Congress still won't have a debate.
The Russian role in all of this potentially very dangerous right now, with Russian warplanes flying around over Syria, U.S. warplanes flying around over Syria. They coordinate, but there could be a disaster up over the skies of Syria.
There could be a disaster, Wolf, you're right. And again, it's just an indication of how complicated this is. It's not just the growing number of nations, the growing number of troops. We've spent $4.75 billion, but you have Russia coming into the theater. You have the Syrian refugee crisis that has become the worst displaced persons crisis since World War II. There is one aspect, though, of Russia being on the ground in Syria that we need to really explore. They're there because Assad was getting ready to topple, and they want to try to promote some stability. At least that is one overlap we have with Russia. We don't overlap with them on much, and even we would define stability a little bit differently. But remember, Russia has been in Syria for 50 years. The only military base they have outside the former Soviet Union, Syria, on the Mediterranean. So they have an interest in stability, and so do we. And hopefully in that small overlap of our goals, we might be able to help promote more stability there.
I spoke with Senator Rand Paul earlier today. He's with you. He says the administration needs formal congressional authorization to go to this, to escalate this war against ISIS right now. And he goes one step further. He says what the president is doing is basically illegal. It goes counter to the Constitution. Do you go that far?
I would say this, Wolf, I do not think there is a legal authorization for this war, but I put more of the blame on Congress's shoulders than the president's, because it's Congress that has an Article 1 responsibility. Whether or not you like what the president is doing, that doesn't change our responsibility. And the congressional leadership, both parties, both houses, have been kind of sending this weird message to the president: don't trouble us with this, because we don't want to get our hands dirty. It's politically challenging. And so what you have in Congress is we're the branch that's supposed to authorize war, but what Congress has decided to do is it wants to criticize, but it neither wants to authorize nor stop what the president is doing. I'm faulting the president for not articulating a clear, serious strategy. But the blame for the unauthorized war is squarely on Congress's shoulders, because it's Congress's job under Article 1 to do this.
Yeah, it's not exactly a profile in courage right now.
Absolutely
These members
not.
are worried about a vote that could be controversial going into the next election, so they'd rather not have to raise their hand or vote yay or nay for that matter. I know you're taking a leadership on this. Go ahead.
But Wolf, the thing that's so important is, yeah, people are afraid of a vote, but we're making people risk their lives. Since we started this war, there have been American hostages executed, then American service members killed, not in direct combat, but who were deployed in the theater, and now we have the first combat death. If we're going to ask people to risk their lives, we ought to be willing a debate and a vote about whether this mission is worth it. And if we're not willing to do that, we shouldn't force 3,700 people and growing to be over there thousands of miles from home, risking their lives every day.
3,700 U.S. troops in Iraq right now. All right, Senator, thanks very much for joining us.